is His Majesty's Sussex Report. I'm Antonio. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time here with us. This is going to be a different kind of episode, not the usual, as you may have noticed from the thumbnail. Look, we have tackled politics and politic issues and so on before, since politics does seep into everything that we do. It has repercussions, and it does for our faves. So politics have one way or another been a thread in the tapestry of this channel and this podcast. Because politics matter. In a few days, Vancouver and Whistler, here in Canada, will be hosting military service veterans and their family members and friends from around the world for the Winter Invictus Games 2025. The irony does not escape me. As we host injured, sick, and wounded military service members that are diligently working on their recovery and rehabilitation, they are an inspiring bunch, and we are pleased and glad to host them, to celebrate them on their journey to becoming even stronger and better. The irony here is that Canada's sovereignty, our sovereignty, is being threatened by a convicted criminal who sits in the Oval Office. I've always thought having a platform matters. Whether you've got 10 people that listen to you, or perhaps one, it matters. It matters what you say, it matters what you do. I have this platform, and I thank each and every one of you. And it's my obligation, it's my duty as a Canadian to use my platform to convey a message. There was a time when Canada and the US stood shoulder to shoulder. Our economies were intertwined, our leaders collaborated, and when disaster struck, we answered each other's calls. But now, the leader of the free world has turned his sights on his most loyal ally, not to strengthen it, but to break it. But before I dive into the details of this, I'd like you to listen to the following. And as you listen to it, you might think I'm being hyperbolic or exaggerating, but perhaps so were the people back then.
In Germany, they came first for the communists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Catholics, and I didn't speak up because I was a Protestant. Then they came for me, and by that time, nobody was left to speak up.
It's a stark reminder of what happens when we ignore the early signs of a creeping threat. The great American poet, author, teacher, mentor said, "When people show you who they are, believe them." We believe Trump because he's showed us who he is. So let's get into what's happening right now. Donald Trump has declared economic war on Canada, imposing crippling tariffs of 25% on Canadian goods. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has responded, vowing retaliation with equal force. But this isn't just about trade or a trade war. This is about control. Trump has placed also a 10% tariff on Canadian energy. This means that the cost of gas at the pumps will be higher for Americans. He claimed it's about border security and drugs, even though fentanyl seizure at the northern border account for just 0.08% of US drug bust. Our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, met with Donald Trump before, and he expressed his concerns about border security and that we in Canada should do more. Our Prime Minister, our country, has invested over $1 billion in securing the border. We've met the demands, but the attacks still continue because this is not about border control and it's not about the flow of fentanyl. There is no fairness in what Donald Trump does or says. There's no logic sometimes to what he does or say. This is a test. It's a test to see how far he can go before anyone pushes back. So, why Canada? And why now? Because the North American agreement trade that we've got presently, he signed it. It's everything he wanted. In his first term, he said it was the most perfect deal ever. Now, all of a sudden, it isn't. So I guess Mr. Trump isn't the chief negotiator as he said he was. But there's something else happening, I believe. Trump knows that Canada holds the keys to the future. You see, fresh water. Canada has the largest freshwater reserves on Earth. And as climate change worsens, water will be the most valuable commodity, more so than oil. Strategic resources. Canada is rich in critical minerals, energy, and timber. Resources that will be vital in innovation, technology in the 21st century. Geopolitical power. As the Arctic ice melts, Canada will control new commercial shipping routes, potentially shifting global trade. You see, by weakening Canada now, Trump and his inner shady circle position themselves for a long-term economic and political control over resources, trade, and power. He is following a textbook playbook of authoritarian regimes. Weaken the strongest allies, sow division, create chaos, and consolidate power. Now, the bigger picture. America's test case. Because as I said, this is a test. If Trump succeeds in isolating Canada, he will move on to Europe, the UK, and other allies. Now, he recently said that Mexico and the US have reached a deal They've reached a deal today. The funny thing about this deal, which is great, I have nothing against Mexico, is that it's a 30-day or a month deal. So in 30 days or so, the bully can go back and say, oh, well, so you did what I said I wanted. Well, now I want more. Because we've done what he said he wanted. He wanted better border security, and we've invested over $1 billion in doing so. All for what? So that now we can come up with some moving target as to the reason as to why he thinks that Canada should be the 51st state. No, thank you. I say no, thank you. So this is a test case. And while Americans, the ones with the red hats, may cheer these tariffs and think that they're gaining something, they don't realize perhaps what's coming next. Canada retaliates. Now, we are very measured in the way we do things. And that's the way we are proceeding. Now, it will not be the politicians that suffer. It will be American farmers, workers, and businesses. Who benefits? Who benefits from this? Not the American people. Not at all. You know who wins? Those in power, those who strive in chaos and division. He's done it already. He's done it in America. He's divided all of you. And for what? For what? To weaken your country? The call to action is to stand up and stand up now. To my brothers and sisters in the US, this is your 100th wake-up call. Because the rest of the world, we don't know how many more wake-up calls need to happen. Trump is not punishing America's enemies. Not one of them. He's punishing you. He is targeting your strongest economic partner, making your goods more expensive and weakening your future. If he can do this to us, Canada, he can do it to anyone else. You see, he hasn't promoted or said he wants Mexico to be the 51st state. He doesn't care. But he wants Canada. And I've already stated my reasons why. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. This is not good for any of us. For any of us. To Canada's allies, whoever may listen to this or watch this, if you stay silent, I heard the Prime Minister of Britain speak today. I don't have anything else to say about that. It seems that everyone is going around in their own individual parts trying to negotiate individually with a bully. It's like one by one going up and getting punched in the face rather than all of them coming together, creating a plan. But no, we will see. But to our allies, if you stay silent, you know you're next. Now is not a time. It's not a time. Now we stand together. Our democracies are under threat. The man who sits in the White House in the Oval Office is not threatening the enemies of America. He wants to be one of them. To my fellow Canadians, this country is the best country in the world to live in. To grow up, to be part of. We are proud Canadians. We may squabble about here or there about nonsense sometimes, but that's our business. We may disagree here or there, but it's our business. Our sovereignty is not for sale. We will not be bullied. We will not be intimidated by a criminal. We stand together. We stand strong. And we will fight for our future. There's a certain politician who I shall not name, who seems like he did not get the memo. The memo said, Team Canada, we stand as one. It didn't say to continue with your ambition to become our prime minister. If this is the way you conduct yourself, monsieur, you are not enough to be the prime minister of this great nation. This is not a time for you to be carrying out your messages on campaign. The memo said, stand for Canada as one. Not the time, monsieur. They're coming for us. And I hope the winds will turn and a diplomatic solution will be reached, because we have already complied with Mr. Trump's request. So we are not quite sure what else exactly he wants us to comply with. But once again, I say this: our sovereignty, sir, is not for sale. Betrayed our friendship, our allyship. We've been loyal to you. We have followed you into battle. And we have fought for freedom and democracy around the world. Before you even entered World War II, we were fighting against the Nazis. We are the North. We are strong and we are free.
This is the Peace Arch, standing near the westernmost edge of the U.S.-Canadian border, 30 miles south of the Olympic City, between Blaine and Washington State, and Surrey, British Columbia. This was dedicated in 1921 to commemorate the treaty that ended the War of 1812 between the U.S. and Great Britain. Remember, Canada was a British colony. That was a long time ago, but the inscription on the arch sums up the relationship. May these gates never be closed. We share more than a long border, of course. No dotted line can divide our joint stewardship of a treasure of natural riches. From the Atlantic to the Pacific, and back again. Shorelines, wild rivers, and Great Lakes, vast forests and grasslands, precious ores buried in majestic mountains, and wildlife everywhere, from sea to shining sea. Canada and the United States share another unique quality. They're immigrant nations, destinations for people around the world who long for political freedoms, economic opportunity, and a long tradition of compassion. Our two nations have the largest trading relationship in the world. $1.5 billion transacted every day. The two-way trade at the Ambassador Bridge between Detroit and Windsor alone equals all American exports to Japan. And we're so comfortable as neighbors. 200 million people across the common border every year. Canada, some may be surprised to learn, is America's largest oil supplier. And the United States is Canada's #1 tourist destination. In a snapshot, Canada is a huge country, second largest in the world next to Russia, but its population is only about a tenth the size of the United States, 34 million, split into 10 provinces and 3 territories. 90% of Canadians live within 100 miles of the U.S. border, residing in world-class cities, thriving farms and smaller towns. With good reason. Life in the Canadian North is only for the hardy. It is remote and oh so cold. The coldest day ever recorded in North America occurred in 1947 in Snag, Yukon, minus 81 degrees, not including wind chill.
Jesse the Sponge.
Canadians are so generous, they share with us their brightest stars in music, comedy, acting, sports, and journalism. And if you're in a fight, you want the Canadians on your side. They were in World War II before we were. They were there on D-Day, in the air and on the beaches. They've been America's most reliable partners in Afghanistan, and it's been costly and painful. Now, when Canada loses a warrior in that distant land, the nation pauses and honors the fallen along what is called the Highway of Heroes outside of Toronto. Even their diplomats have been there for us. In 1980, a year before the conclusion of the Iranian hostage crisis, 6 American embassy personnel would escape from Iran in an operation organized by Canadian Ambassador Ken Taylor.
The United States is thanking Canada for rescuing those 6 American diplomats from Iran.
Taylor hid the Americans after the U.S. Embassy was stormed, created fake Canadian passports, then flew the Americans out of Tehran with a bogus cover story. The 6 in disguise as a mob-looking Hollywood film crew, allegedly researching a prospective sci-fi flick. Now, all these years later, Taylor has admitted he was formerly working for the CIA, and if the Iranians had discovered he was an American spy, he would have been in big, big trouble. In our darkest hours, Canada has been with us. On September 11th, as the United States shut down its airspace, Canada instituted Operation Yellow Ribbon, landing 239 U.S.-bound flights with 33,000 passengers at 17 different Canadian airports. And then, amid the uncertainty that followed, entire communities housed and fed those thousands of passengers for days afterward. In the long history of sovereign neighbors, there never has been a relationship as close, productive, and peaceful as the U.S. and Canada. We share a continent and so much more. Speaking before the Canadian Parliament, President Kennedy summarized the relationship this way.
Geography has made us neighbors. History has made us friends. Economics has made us partners. And necessity has made us allies.
Those whom nature hath so joined together, said Kennedy, let no man put asunder. Of course, there are some distinct differences in the culture. The American fans at these games will be unfurling their stars and stripes at every opportunity and chanting USA, USA. The Canadian Prime Minister had to go before Parliament yesterday and urge Canadians to engage in what he called an uncharacteristic outburst of patriotism, saying, don't be afraid to wave those flags. We'll apologize to the world for our immodesty later. So that's a big difference, Al.
He hopes he has to do it very often. You know what struck me in that piece among all of the items? There are more people in California than there are in all of Canada.
Well, and Canada has a stronger and more sound economy at this point as well. That's a distinctive difference between the two.
Perfectly put. Thank you, Tom. See you during the week.